So I'm so excited to welcome all of you guys to our first Lunch and Learn. Today we'll be covering effective communication, a topic that was actually highly requested by our teammates. So I'm very excited on that end. I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Trisha Aure. She is our Senior Director of Operations Delivery. Trisha has been with Square One for the past 7 years and 10 years in MedTech industry. In addition, Trisha is an active mentor for MedTech Women. She received an award in 2017 for 40 Under 40 by the Greater Irvine Chamber. If anyone knows Trisha, her fur baby is Bailey, who's also on the picture. Welcome, Trish.
Oh, well, thank you. I do want to make sure she aged me a little bit more. My 40 under 40 was in 21, not in 17. She just added 5 years to me. So I'm just kidding. But thank you, Z. I'm super excited to be kicking this off with you guys. As she said, this is our first ever Lunch and Learn program, and it comes from the engineers we work with. So I appreciate the the need for professional growth. I love this topic of effective communication. So I'm really excited to be kicking this off with you guys. So let's just kind of jump in. So effective communication, what this really stands for is ensuring clarity, active listening, and considering the audience in context to foster understanding and positive interactions. The theme with communicating effectively is being aware that you're not speaking at someone, but discussing a particular topic, if that's projects, deadlines, challenges, and being collaborative, even if you're leading a conversation, project, team, whatever that may be. So today, what we'll be covering is conflict management, emotional intelligence, sometimes related to as EQ, and accountability. When these three aspects are in our everyday communication, it will lead to strong partnerships, better outcomes, and mitigating risks along the way. So, as we go through our discussion today, I'd love for this to be collaborative. As I kind of mentioned before, I don't want to be speaking at people. So if you have questions, there's a little raise your hand feature on the Teams. There's also a Q&A section that you can type your questions in. Don't use the chat part, but Z will be monitoring, and we'll kind of take the questions from there. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
So conflict management, such a strong tool when we're talking about not even in just your professional world, but in your personal life as well. Being able to handle different views, opinions, and feedback is vital to grow as a person and as a professional. The best way to handle this is by active listening, along with picking up on nonverbal cues, which we'll get into more detail when we talk about EQ. This is not an easy skill to pick up, especially when we are the ones speaking or leading discussion. A lot of times we're focused on what our next statement is and not what's actually going on in the room. This takes a lot of time and practice along with a lot of awareness, which is it's hard. You kind of just got to slow down a little bit in your guys' approach. The best place to start is being aware of your own communication style and your own nonverbal cues. Communicating effectively helps you get ahead of conflict, but let's be real, things aren't always perfect, right? There are times when there are disputes or disagreements, and we now need to figure out how to address this constructively, which are beneficial to all, including what the tasks that are at hand. This also includes people that are not involved directly in this conflict. The way this is handled will have a direct impact on how people show up moving forward. Now let's get into some common conflict styles. So here's a few that kind of pop up, and you see, I'm sure everyone has seen a lot of these in different areas within just life in general, but definitely within the workplace. The whole, hey, I'm right, you're wrong scenario. Even if you are right, it's very important to hear the other person out before assuming they're wrong. Maybe there's an aspect you just weren't considering. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know if any of you guys have heard this before, but is seek to understand before being understood. And what I take this when I first started learning about it was we all have our opinion, and we're so easy to want to jump in and say, well, this is what I think, without really understanding what the other person is coming from or their opinion on it. Once you hear them out, you'll be able to now change whatever maybe it might not change your opinion, but the way you approach your next steps in that conversation. The fun avoiding part, right? Sweeping the problem under the rug. Let's be real. This doesn't solve anything. More than likely, it's going to pop up at another part, either in your career, in the project, whatever it is. Definitely not a fun conflict style. Accommodating, just giving in. I'm not going to say anything. Okay, fine, you win, right? Sometimes just being heard will help someone know they have a voice and that their opinion matters. So one of the ones I think is the best style here is the collaborating one. So figuring out a solution together. I love whiteboard exercises. Get the people in the room. Maybe it even involves some of the other people in the team that maybe weren't exactly part of that conflict, but putting out different ideas on a board and then start to spider web them together to be able to get the best solution out there. This encourages not only participation, but buy-in from the whole team, that we all came up with this particular solution together. And then compromising, both giving in a little for the greater good of the team. It's that adage of, hey, let's agree to disagree, but this is where we're going to be able to have common ground, right? Again, the conflicts, no matter how many people that it initially starts with, affects everybody around them. Even if it could be in cross-functional departments, that might trickle into communication going that way as well. So everybody is seeing conflict, right? What style do you guys typically see as the first kind of reaction when you guys see something arise or some type of problem come up?
From my experience, the common conflict style I see is avoiding. I guess it's a lot easier for teammates or for a lot of people that I work with to just avoid the problem instead of addressing it.
And does that remedy the situation?
Not a lot. Most of the time, it actually creates more conflict and more disagreements and a lot of assumptions, and it doesn't move the needle forward at any point.
Yeah, and sometimes when I see with the avoiding side of it, it can create animosity later on, and now you're stirring into it. It's that whole, hey, now it's going to start boiling over and one day it's just going to snap, right?
Mhm.
I've been there, it's not a fun position to be in. I've actually was that person where it was easier for me not to say something. And then one day it comes out of nowhere. And it wasn't the right words that I was going to say.
Right.
All right. So we go through the conflict, so conflict management, obviously we want it to get to a conflict resolution, right? So very necessary. Conflicts are always going to arise. The more we are willingly involving ourselves in conflict management and the process it takes to navigate to a resolution, the better we'll be in as a leader and a partner on a team. The process, though, is the important part to remember. Most of the time, there are multiple steps in order to handle it effectively. Very rarely is it like, hey, one word and it's moved on, right? Because you need to figure out not only how to have a resolution to that conflict, but how can we make sure it doesn't happen later on? All right, EQ. This is one of my favorite sections. So emotional intelligence, very, very strong characteristic for someone to be able to possess, but it takes a lot of awareness, control, and ability to pivot when necessary. Once you understand EQ, this will not only help you understand how you show up, but how you know how your messages are coming across to your audience or what their interest level is or their non-interest level, right? For me, I love accountability buddies for this skill. Many times we do things that we don't realize we're actually doing or maybe doing because we're nervous, and it ends up changing the message our words are actually trying to convey. I've read a lot of books on nonverbal cues and the impact that it gives off. This book, Cues here by Vanessa Van Edwards, is one of my favorite, most recent reads I've had. Very eye-opening on small gestures that can make a huge impact. I've even had myself videotaped before on how I do meetings, and it's crazy the things that you don't realize that you do. Folding your arms. You're not interested or you're blocking yourself from the conversation. That's what that signifies. You see people yawning when you're talking, and I'm looking through, but you guys don't have your cameras on all of you, so I don't know if you're yawning or I'm boring you yet. But being on your phone, right? If you're seeing this while you're speaking or presenting something, you have lost some of your audience, which you can probably guess they're not listening to your message either. Now is the time to pivot and figure out how to re-engage with those folks. Don't just assume because people are physically in a meeting or looking like they're listening that they actually are. This is when you have to kind of think on your feet, figure out how to re-engage. Maybe it's asking questions back to your audience. Maybe it's skipping over some boring slides to get to the actual meat of your presentation. We've all been in a presentation where we look at the bottom of it and it says 72 slides. Right there, I'm already checked out a little bit. But don't worry, guys, I only have 42 in mine. I'm just kidding. I don't have 42 either. But it's those little gestures that you're starting to see with people or that you may be doing. And like I said, it's changing how your messages are starting to come across. So if you can recognize when people are not engaged in a conversation, you're already ahead. It's on the person that's speaking to ensure that everyone else is on the same page. And that's not necessarily just in a presentation. It's even when we're in meetings. But if you can accomplish this, then you'll improve teamwork, you'll reduce conflict and any misunderstandings that may arise, and it'll also build trust among the team. Having the foundation of these three attributes on a team or a project will create a team of collaboration, accountability, which we'll talk about next, and ultimately a successful result, whichever that may be. Recently, I was running a meeting where I thought I was clear with my message, including what my expectations were. I even followed that meeting up with an email. A week after, I found that people were not on the same page. I actually got pretty upset at first, and my first reaction was very defensive and why wasn't anyone listening to me? I spoke to one of my partners about it and took a moment to kind of reflect on my actions leading up to that. And I started remembering that during the meeting, people weren't really taking notes, even though I was assigning tasks. I also didn't ask any questions or get anyone engaged during that time. What I should have done was ask to see if anyone needed any clarity or maybe what their thoughts were. Let me get your thoughts and your buy-in as well. I also looked at my follow-up email. Very surface level, very little detail. No wonder there was misunderstanding and conflict that I felt was starting to rise, mainly within myself. But at the end of the day, the only person I can blame that on was myself. But I didn't take this experience as a negative one, but as a learning experience that I wanted to ensure that I kept improving on. So every time I went into my next meetings, I just started looking more around the room and engagement. I don't like to speak at people. I want to make sure that people are talking. And one of the rules I always have kind of learned throughout my career is if I've been asked to be a part of a meeting, I need to make sure I earned that seat. And what that means is I need to be vocal. I need to make sure that I have different thoughts or opinions or whatever it is to make sure people know that I earned my seat there. But EQ is not always just a reactive skill. This should also be utilized to be an effective communicator. We have all been in positions where we need to speak or present to various levels of folks within our organization. And the best way to mitigate losing your audience or confusing your audience is by knowing your audience ahead of time. There are many ways the same message can get across, but it's understanding what's important to them and then crafting that message focused on that understanding. For instance, for me, I like direct conversations. Tell me what you need, why you need it, and when you need it by. Some people like, I want to know the stats. I want to know the reason and the percentages of certain things. And then I want to know the result and the chances of the failures or whatever that is, right? Some people want every single detail within that. So being able to know who your audience is, now you just craft your message a little bit differently in order to make sure that they're retaining the information and that they're bought in, right? So I'm going to ask you guys something. So think about leadership, executives, and I'm not talking just your manager or your project manager, above them and maybe even above them, right? So a lot of the things we've been talking about, is the awareness aspect, right? Not everyone thinks the same way, which they shouldn't. This would be a boring world if we did. But also not everyone's individual tasks and goals are exactly the same, right? So it's about understanding those different aspects, but knowing how you show up and how you're perceived can also create its own message. Is that the message you're trying to send non-verbally, right? And I'm going to talk to the CEO with my arms folded over my chest and with a grimace on my face. That was one of the things I learned when I videotaped myself in meetings. I just looked really mad in meetings. One of my past companies, they made people do a perception exercise. I don't know if you've ever heard this. I believe it was when we were looking to either get promoted or change roles, but leadership would choose various people in the office, fill out a questionnaire about their perception of you. Some you've never worked with, some are in different departments that you barely worked with, and then you had one maybe direct coworker. From the people outside of my team, I was perceived as cliquey and standoffish. Now, my team had other characteristics that I actually believed was how I showed up. But at the end of the day, the outside team was how people thought I was. It was up to me to decide to continue to show up the same or make an actual effort to have people perceive me differently. I don't want people to think they can't come and talk to me. So although this was an exercise I wasn't really bought into, at the end of the day, it was truth, and I didn't like the vibes I was giving off. All right, accountability. So we had a lot of questions around this, and it's a great topic. More specifically, the questions were around how to hold others accountable, but I think it's important that we show up and hold ourselves accountable first. If we can master this, it makes it a lot easier to not only hold others accountable, but how to do so in a professional manner. So I don't know if anyone has ever really thought about making accountability not just an action or end result, but as a culture. This is a lot easier to start on a team level, this culture of accountability, or maybe your peers, your department, or maybe a particular project. I always like to start out projects, or if I'm trying to change an initiative, by starting with the why, then the path in order to get there, and then the result or the expected outcome. You need to practice what you preach. Be the example. When you show up for others, they won't want to let you down when the tables are turned. When everyone is in alignment, results will come, guaranteed. When challenges arise, which let's be real, challenges arise, it's just a matter of how it'll impact your work. But when they do arise, that will start setting the tone for the culture of accountability. Now, how many times have you guys dealt with some type of scope change? Let me see some hands. I know we've all dealt with it. We're dealing with them now. It's going to happen again, right? So sometimes I just feel like it's inevitable. The question is when. No matter the reason or who's at fault, it's how the team handles the change and moves forward is all that matters. Diagnose what happened. How did it happen? Then let's recalibrate and put a new timeline in place. A lot of times we're still tied to a deadline that can either not be changed or changed slightly. That still doesn't give us really much wiggle room. So, and it's about the strategizing part of it, right? How do we get it done? The first thing you want to do is how do we get it done within that deadline? Maybe it needs more hours. Maybe it needs more people. Or if it is impossible to hit, why and what is impossible to hit? And then you go to leadership or the owner of the project and state your plan. Remember, it's how you message your plan as well. Good news. We will still be able to hit the original deadline, but we need 2 extra people on the team to do validation work to get this done. Or, so the team brainstormed yesterday on various plans to stay within deadline. And in order for us to hold up quality standards and ensure this is done correctly, we will need 3 more days. And then this is the plan on moving forward. Then you lay it out. Now, you may not get that extension, but coming to the table with a solution is always better than come to the table with just a problem. I have a rule with my team. Don't come to me with the problem. Come to me with a potential solution, and then we'll both work it out and work through it and create whatever the best solution is. Now, every once in a while, I still get an employee will come to me with a problem and not a solution. You know what the first thing that comes out of my mouth? Well, what do you think? And then I wait. Most of the time, they actually have the solution. It's a matter of empowering them to help get them there on their own. All right, so now how to hold others accountable. The biggest thing to take into consideration here when holding others accountable is ensuring you're focused on utilizing effective communication. I know I've stated this and I'm going to probably continue for my entire career, but I always like to start out with the why. Why is this important? Why do I need help with this? Why am I asking you? I think this is important for people to understand the why, and you're not just giving me work just because you don't want to do it. And then you provide a deadline. Don't say ASAP. Don't say EOD. Someone's EOD and ASAP may make something completely different than they do to you, right? So I need this by 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Is that doable? Get their buy-in and get their commitment on that, right? Also, when providing a deadline, make sure it's ahead of your deadline. Let's say you're needing something redlined and you need to provide your update by 3 p.m. on Friday. Don't ask for it to be done by 2 p.m. on Friday. Give yourself a little bit of time to be able to review the work, ask questions if you need to before your deadline. Also, it's important to make sure that you're giving them enough time. Don't ask them at Friday at 10 to do something Friday by 2 that same day, right? They have their schedule too. They have their tasks. If you have the opportunity and the time to do so, respect their schedule as well and give them some time to be able to figure it how to fit it in, move stuff around if necessary. Most situations, I like to follow up requests or conversations with an email, almost kind of like meeting minutes, stating what was discussed and the timeline that was agreed upon. So now there's no misunderstandings. That's also the opportunity where you can add documents that are need to go back and forth, whatever it is, right? So I always like to have something in writing. Always make sure you show up the way you want others to show up. So the biggest thing, and hopefully, you guys are really taken away, at least for the accountability part, is, be the example. Be who you want others to kind of show up the way you're going to show up, right? And this is not just for your internal team. This is for your external team. We all have external partners, suppliers, maybe even people within our network that we necessarily don't even work with. It's just people within our community. It's very important that we keep strong relationships across the board, right? Such a strong topic. I could probably talk for another hour about effective communication, EQ, all of this stuff. We do have a resources page too that our lovely PMZ put together.
Thank you. So two of these books are on this resources I personally read, and one of my favorite one is Elegant Warrior. And this is a very easy read. I like this book because it emphasizes the importance of elegance in communication. It's kind of like art, a balance of assertiveness with empathy, turning conflict into a productive conversation. I highly recommend this book if you're looking to improve your conflict resolutions and communication skills, right? As we all have to have some type of communication as we work in the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And thank you,
guys. I hope
Trisha.
you have a great day.